Hello everyone. Today I wanted to talk about a subject that perhaps you've been a victim of. This woman was very abusive to me verbally. When I went to get a manager, it's because this was above my pay grade. I was an employee. We don't have the mechanisms in place at most jobs to counteract somebody who's being very abusive to us, except for to get a manager involved. That's what they are paid to do. They are paid to handle the harder things we should not have to handle as regular employees. One of the managers where I worked was in his 40s. The other manager was in his 20s. They are the ones that are supposed to be there when we go to them as employees and say, hey, I'm having trouble with this. I have a problem. Can you help me? When I went to the younger of the two managers and explained that there was a situation that I did not know how to handle, and I told him that it's getting worse. People's behavior is getting worse. This is based off of my opinion from being in the public for over 35 years. This is based on my opinion from being a cashier, being a waitress, working as a volunteer at the hospital. I've done many things in my life. I've also had professional careers. But when I've worked in the public, I have never encountered the absolute abuse that I've encountered the past couple of years. The younger employee told me that there's no such thing, that people are always people and nobody's behavior is getting worse. And I found it to be very condescending and rude. I had years of experience, far more than this person had lived on earth. To pretend like I was making this up or I was being sensitive. I am not a sensitive individual. I can hold my own. This woman approached me with such brutality, it left me speechless. She walked up to me where I was working with another client, and she started yelling derogatory names at me. So I politely asked her how I could help her once I excused myself from the other client. And she basically started calling me names again, and she was outraged at something that had nothing to do with me, that had nothing to do with where I worked, that had nothing to do with anything. I asked her if there was anything specific that I could help her with today, hoping one thing in mind I could redirect her to or something. I wasn't sure what was going on. I just knew this woman was angry. I was afraid she was going to become violent. I had a person I was already helping, and my two managers weren't in my office area. They were outside of my office area through a different doorway. Eventually the woman chastised me for about 10 minutes, yelling, screaming, causing a ruckus. Other people were leaving the office because they were getting upset by the words that she was saying, which I will not repeat here. But just imagine the worst of the worst words that you could say to somebody. She was calling me names that I've never heard anyone else called before. They were very derogatory adjectives, let's just say. I went to get my manager. I excused myself politely and I said, oh, you know what? Could you just wait right here for one moment? I was very soft-spoken. I wanted to try to de-escalate the situation and not, make her more enraged. And she turned around, she sighed heavily. She was obviously disgusted. And I went to get my manager. The older of the two managers was not there. He was at lunch. The younger manager, I explained to him that this was different. I didn't know how to help this person. She was just standing in my office, making a ruckus, swearing, screaming, saying really horrible things to me, and it was causing other people to leave the building because they were getting fed up and disgusted by her, and I needed somebody to help me, to back me up here. The manager went in the office, and immediately she started screaming at him, saying horrible explicitives. he was able to turn her around and make a joke about something, and it caught her off guard and she started to laugh. So at that point, I felt reassured, like whatever this is, he's got a handle on it and it will get better from here. And he said, well, why would you come in here and yell at her and carry on like you have? What is going on? What do you need us to help you with? Eventually, he got it out of her what she was there for, because we didn't even know why she was in the office to begin with. But he got it out of her, and she went about her business with him. They finished doing what they needed to do. The person that they picked to deliver to this woman, and he said when he got to her house, she was very kind. She opened her door. She offered him some dinner. She had just made a stew beef, and she offered him a beverage. He doesn't normally enter a home. He politely declined, and then she started proceeding to tell him about some things that made him very, very nervous. This was a man that was in the military. He had served our country for over 20 years. He came back and told me about this woman's criminal history that she relayed to him. And as it turned out, she was on bond waiting her trial. This was a very real, this was a very scary interaction with a potential client at my business where I was only trying to do my job. This woman's behavior was over the top, ridiculously rude. And then to come to find out, she's waiting trial for a horrific crime. The second extreme incident that I had at this job asked me to go to a different location to work, and it was my last day in this particular office before I transferred. I had so much work to do. I had binders to copy and prepare myself for my new role, because the new place was actually brand new, built from the ground up. So I wouldn't have my resources available there. I had to make copies and bring them with me. A woman came into the building and immediately started screaming that she was very upset that we closed at the time we closed. We still were open for that moment, but we were closing soon. So I reassured her, no worries, we're going to help you. And if closing time comes, we're going to still help you until we're finished here. We don't kick people out of the office. I thought that would reassure this client. There were about 6 people there at the same time, and it was just me and another coworker at this time. Because it was so close to closing, everybody else had left, including the managers. We had a photocopier at my desk. So as I'm standing there copying documents that I can bring as a resource to my next location, the woman asked me a question, and I told her the answer very politely. I told her the answer. I stopped what I was doing. I looked up. I tried to answer to the best of my ability. And while I was doing that, my coworker was behind me talking to 4 people at the same time. And they all were talking to him. He had 2 people on each side of him. It was almost closing time, so we were trying to help all these people before we closed for the day. This woman took her fist and started punching a cabinet that was part of my desk space. I took a step back. I took a physical step back. I didn't want to react. I stayed calm. But I just figured it would be better to take a step away from this person than to let her accidentally hit me. So I backed away, and that made her more angry. She started punching this cabinet as hard as she could. I became fearful for her for many reasons. I didn't know if I should call an ambulance for this woman. I wasn't really sure what to do. Because my coworker was so involved in the other 4 people that he was working with, he heard the commotion. He didn't realize the seriousness of the nature of it. This woman came in with her husband. Her husband looked at me as if I had done something to start this. Well, obviously that's silly. I hadn't done anything. I'm just trying to help this woman. I haven't tried to put her into a rage mode or push her trigger buttons. And she started screaming and said that she called and told the people she was coming and so would be available. And I said, oh, well, I understand now. I said, you may have the wrong office. We don't have anybody by that name here. And the woman started screaming again, calling me a liar, calling me all kinds of names. At this point, 2 people walked out. They heard what was going on. They saw the commotion. Because it was very upsetting, they left. And I don't blame them one bit. I can't imagine being a client or a customer in that situation and looking on at this ordeal. Once I explained to her that I thought she might have the wrong office, that she was probably looking for the office building that was like a block away, she started to pull her hair out. And she started to take her fist and just beat the top of my desk relentlessly. So finally, her husband looked at me as if he expected me to have a solution. And I said, sir, I'm so sorry, but I think that if you go to the building 1 block over, I think the office you're looking for is on the 2nd floor. I think that might help. In fact, you know, if you want to go to the parking lot and call and see for sure if that's the place you're supposed to be at, I won't lock the door until you confirm that. I tried to be accommodating during this time, and it clearly didn't matter. The husband was enraged. I'm sure he was embarrassed too, but he just looked at me and gave me a bunch of words. For some reason, he thought they were appropriate, directed at me, and he left with her, and I never saw them again. The third extreme incident involved a client that I had worked with over the course of 2 years. Lovely lady, very wealthy, and I had never had a problem with this lady. She was always so kind, polite, and she was a very good paying client. She came in about a year after I had originally worked with her, and she told me she was having an issue. She explained what her issue was, and I told her that that was new to me. I didn't know how to solve that, but I was going to do my best and find out how to help her. It was going to involve getting in touch with some other people and probably getting a manager higher up in the company involved, but I would definitely get back to her. So I took her number and I promised I would look into it and call her. And that's exactly what I did. I started out by reaching out to certain people. Those people wanted to talk to her directly. They didn't want to go through me. And I understood that. And I said, okay, yeah. I called her. I said, hey, is it okay if I share your phone number? And she said, absolutely. So that's what I did. So then I didn't hear back for 2 weeks. So I thought, well, I really should follow up on this. I don't want to call her, but I will call the person I reached out to and see if anything was resolved. So I called them, and they told me that the person there that was involved was sick with COVID and was out of the office for a couple of weeks. I didn't know if this client had received a resolution to her issues. I called the client and I asked her, I just wanted to make sure, that somebody reached out to you from this other company as they said they were going to. And she said they did. And she said the woman at the company reached out to her. My client explained her issues to her and said this is what she needed to move forward. The woman at the other company then called me and said, what did you do? What are you doing? Why is this woman harassing me? I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What do you mean she's harassing you? She's been a client for about 2 years. Very good paying client. I mean, isn't that what we all strive for? Good paying clients? Like, what is your problem? And she said, I can't help her. And don't get me involved again. Okay. So I reached out to my client and I said, it seems that we're not going to get resolution through the woman you were talking to. So I'm going to go above her to a higher manager in corporate and see what we can do. And she was very thankful. I found out that the manager in corporate was on vacation. I reached out to the client again, and I'm a really big communicator that way. So I don't like leaving people hanging. I think that makes people more mad than anything when you leave them hanging. About 7 days go by. I knew he had been back, but he also had like a day of meetings. So I didn't want to just jump on him at that point. Another day, and I called his cell phone and I said, hey, we have this really lovely client. She has an issue. I reached out to this other person at this other company, and that was a dead end. Manager said, what do you want me to do about it? I'm just the little employee here. I'm not a manager. I have no pull. I have no strings. I have no say in anything. I'm just trying to do my job. This is an absolute gem of a client we want to keep. She has a genuine issue. It is a legitimate issue, and we need to help her with it. I don't know what to do now that this other company told me basically to go pound sand. Said, well, what you tell her, the client, is that we're not going to help her. She's figured out. Unfortunately, I called the other company pleading with them to please help me in some way. Thankfully, I got a different person, and I told them the situation. I don't want to lose her as a client, which I'm sure I will if we can't help her with this. It's no fault of hers, and it's something that we absolutely should be able to solve for her, and it shouldn't be that difficult. This person did give me some suggestions, and I reached back out to my client, and I told her the suggestions that were given. The suggestions that were given no longer worked. So, for example, you know how technology changes, there's upgrades, things work one day and 5 years from now they don't work. I have an old computer, can't use it, doesn't work. The only thing it's good for is holding pictures that I took years ago. This is a similar situation. Once again, the lady reached out to me. I explained to her that I didn't really know what to do at this point. So she took it upon herself to call somebody out to her home, and they went out there and they tried to work with her and address the issues she was having. And they identified specific issues, and they identified what she needed to fix it. She came back to me in person to my office, and she handed me a list. She said, I hired this professional. They came out, they looked over everything, and they said, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to fix it. I don't know what any of this stuff is, but I can certainly find out. Called up the company again, and I said, hey, it's me again. I'm talking to the client, and she had a different professional go out to her house. They helped her look things over, and then they suggested that she needs A, B, and C. What can we do for her? The customer at this point gets very upset. Now, I don't really blame her at all. She felt like she had been getting the runaround, and she also felt like she shouldn't have to pay a professional to advise her to do these simple basic things that the company should have advised her to do. And I agreed with that. I mean, it's really hard to argue with that. The problem was the company said that these products that she needed were not made in the US, and they could not get it at all. How does she go about getting it? Because her stuff doesn't work without these replacement pieces. So how does she go about getting those replacement pieces in order to have her products work? Say you have a home with 3 bedrooms and every bedroom has a computer, which is likely today in this day of technology. It's probably pretty common. one of the computers isn't working and you need a part for it. And you need a company to get it for you. It's not something that you just buy on your own. They told me they could not get it for her, but they did tell me where she might be able to get it. The problem was now she felt my employer should have to pay for it. She wasn't upset with me because she knew I was really trying my hardest to help her. But she didn't feel satisfied with this whole outcome. This different company actually had it in their warehouse and could get it to her in a couple of days. But it was $983. And she came back to me in person and said, hey, I'm not going to pay $983. Do you have a partnership with that other company? Is there a way you could get it on discount? Is there a way you could get the other company to get it on discount? All these questions. I will try my best to find out these answers, but I honestly don't know. I've never had this situation. I've never had this runaround. Usually we can get pretty much anything. I've never had a situation where we couldn't get something to help. So I don't know what I can do here. So she stood there for an hour while I made phone calls, while I sent emails. I reached back out to the manager higher up in my company. Nobody responded. She went home feeling very frustrated. I called my manager and I said, hey, is there any way we can have a meeting? I think we really need to have a meeting about this. So he came to the office. He was not in the same state that I worked, but he came to my office to have this meeting. And he said, what's going on? And I said, well, these are the facts. I'm just trying to get help for this woman or some resolution. He's like, yeah, you got it. It's $983. Too bad on her if she don't want to pay it. Okay, well, the problem is she keeps coming in. Is there a way you can call her and tell her that? Because you're higher up than me. I'm just, again, I'm the lowest employee here. I don't have any authority to do anything. So is there a way you can call her, reach out to her, and just tell her this? By coincidence, this client came back through the front door as I was sitting in the conference room having this meeting with the manager. And I didn't know she was in there. He didn't know she was in there either. I was not expecting her. My coworker asked her to have a seat at my desk. And he really wasn't informed about what was going on because I never burdened him with all of this. He had his own work he was doing. He just came to the conference room and told me she was there. So I looked at the manager and I said, oh, perfect timing. She's here. Is there a way you could go out with me and we could have this conversation together? I'm trying to find resolution for this client. And if we don't have one, then I feel that a manager should tell her that because I'm out of words. This is a manager problem. He looked at me and he said, no, you're going to go back out there and you're going to tell her we're not doing anything for her. And this is her third computer. So obviously she doesn't need another computer. She has two that work. And he literally walked out of the room, walked in the other direction, got out in his car and left and went back to the state he came from. I went back out to this client and I explained to her that I was very sorry. I was not able to come to a resolution, that I had just met the manager here today to discuss this, and he basically isn't willing to help in any way. And actually, I pointed out to his car as it was leaving the parking lot, and I said, there he goes. And she looked at me and she goes, you know what? Thank you so much for everything you've done. I really appreciate it. I know it's not your fault. I'm not trying to take it out on you. But I will never do business with this company again. When you don't have the support and backup of managers, it's very difficult. And I can't do my regular job because I'm working on things like this that really a manager should be handling. But I left the company. It wasn't just because of these reasons. There is legitimate abuse going on in workplaces. I feel like employees are being abused. I feel like managers are turning their backs and walking away, even though they're getting the big bucks to handle these things. And I think everything is falling down on the employees. That is partly why I got burnt out and left. I can recall 35 years ago in the workforce, and I never dealt with anything like this. I never had to deal with anything like this in any of the jobs I've ever worked. These were firsts for me, and these happened within the last 2 years. It is 2025, and I have definitely seen a change in the behavior of clients and customers, whether it's a professional office, whether it's fast food, whether it's a grocery store, it doesn't seem to matter. People have changed. People have no qualms about just raging in someone's face now. We're all just trying to do a job. We're all just trying to make a living. We're all just trying to go to work every day so we can feed our families, so we can have a roof over our head. Tell me what you think. Leave a comment if you've experienced this yourself, or perhaps you haven't experienced it, but you've been an onlooker and witnessed it. What did you witness? What did you experience? And have you noticed a shift in the behavior of clients and customers in the public? Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Goodbye.